Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro. So today we're going to talk about asbestos insulating board and the issues or problems surrounding its removal, highlighting some of the points that you probably need to be aware of and think about if you're ever sort of considering or involved with these types of projects.
So first off, what is asbestos insulating board? Well, it is a board. First and foremost, the clue's in the name. But when I say board, it's a medium density board. It is friable. There is a relatively high asbestos content of amosite and chrysotile. When you look at a raw board that's not been painted or anything like that, you can literally see the asbestos fibre sticking out of the board, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easily friable, easily damaged, can easily release asbestos fibre and expose people, can't it?
Yeah, so it sort of contained predominantly amosite, and chrysotile was used in some of the boards, and chrysotile was used in some of the earlier boards. So if you have got an asbestos insulating board with chrysotile in it, generally speaking, that is probably an old board, and that's mixed with calcium silicate. So that's the sort of secondary
That's
material.
the binding material.
Yeah. So it's kind of whitish colour, isn't it? Generally, these boards are
Off-white, bit grey.
bit grey, yeah. Depending on how much asbestos is in it, sometimes it can make it a bit darker, and if it has got chrysotile in it, you can actually see the blue fibres.
Yeah, you can indeed, definitely. So where was it used?
So, well, where wasn't it used, really? So asbestos insulating board, mainly, sort of probably most commonly, yes, ceiling tiles.
Yeah, definitely a big area of concern in this country.
Yeah, definitely. So ceiling tiles which are either screwed in laying in grids, seeing acoustic ones with holes in it, which don't look...
Yeah, no, that's very good. That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, the ones that are all pre-drilled and, like you say, for attenuation purposes.
Yeah.
You see them in emergency generator rooms and stuff like that, don't you? And where else is it used? Well, it's so versatile. If you think of asbestos insulating board as along the same lines as timber or plasterboard, I'd say probably more timber. It was used as a liner for panelling, for boxing, for fire breaks. It was used in class buildings, so certain building, the way they were made, packers in class buildings, packers in floors, packers in windows, around doors.
Yeah. Indoors, above doors, below doors.
Yeah, exactly. It was literally anything and everything.
Even where it shouldn't have been, you come across asbestos, and what I mean by that is like offcuts, like chucked in floor voids, in the bottom of lift shafts, and just literally...
Just random bits.
Random anywhere.
Yeah, and it does amaze me of how much it was used and the locations that it's been used in. And like you say, that sometimes there's no rhyme or reason of why it's there.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's inherently its own problems when you're an asbestos surveyor trying to find...
It was such a commonly used fire protector, really.
Yeah, that was the main reason, wasn't it?
And so it was extensively used in, buildings such as, schools, hospitals, factories, warehouses, offices.
Houses.
Yeah, houses, yeah.
There was literally nowhere that it wasn't used.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a type of property that it hasn't been used in.
For houses, it's predominantly on backs of boiler cupboard doors. The
heating systems.
Heating system, yeah. Warm air blowing heating systems. So you'd have a warm air blower unit, and that would be lined. All the vents and the ducting off of it would be lined with asbestos insulating board.
Yeah, essentially the ducts are asbestos insulating board.
Yeah,
so the warm air blowing through the ducting is just blowing across the asbestos.
Which that's got its own problems.
Yeah.
But it's also used as kind of underneath boilers, behind electrics, as lining panels again. Yeah, so it was literally everywhere. Yeah. Anywhere you could think of it. Anywhere that you would use timber or plasterboard.
Yeah.
Asbestos insulating board has also been used.
Yeah. Anywhere where you would like to stop a fire as well. That's
Yeah.
a good one. You know, fire breaks predominantly, ceilings, in risers. Yeah, just basically anywhere.
Yeah. So how was it installed? Well, again, like when you think of it along the same lines as timber, screwed, nailed, glued, just used basically like that.
Yeah, so generally speaking, carpenters / chippies, there would be types of trades predominantly using these and installing these. Yeah. And they would saw it on site and, like you said, screw, nail, glue, fix it on site as well.
Yeah, so if, I don't know, I'm a Sparky, I'm about to install my electrics, but I need a panel to back it first.
Yeah.
I'm going to chop a bit of this board up, throw it on the wall, then I'm going to drill into it, and then I'm going to fix my electrics, and then do whatever I need to do with my electrics. It was kind of, like you say, anything like you would use timber, you just use what you need to build what you need out of it, basically.
Yeah.
So what kind of removal issues do we face when doing asbestos removal for insulating board?
Yeah, so asbestos removal, generally of asbestos insulating board, again, needs to be done by a licensed contractor. So a HC licensed contractor, and generally speaking, that will be under fully controlled conditions. There are occasions where, you know, if it was just a loose panel or, you know, you could remove the board whole without actually sort of disturbing it, that may be considered non-licensed.
Yeah, but generally speaking, it is enclosure works.
Yeah, generally speaking, removal is licensed and enclosure works, yeah. And again, it really depends. The removal process does vary depending on the application, where it was used, how it was fixed. So that does vary a little bit.
It does.
But again, as with all asbestos, it's wet removal. So it's suppressing the material, making sure it's damp to reduce any fibre release from that.
Yeah, I mean, they'd use kind of handheld sprayers to wet the material down. Magnets are used, which might sound random, but so if you've got a ceiling that's been screwed and it's fixed in place, and then the ceiling's been painted over, you can't see the screw heads anymore.
Yeah.
So as part of the kind of controlled removal technique is the contractor should be finding the screw heads with a magnet and then removing that screw while shadow vacuuming.
Yeah, and the reason is that so we can remove the panels whole without breaking them or, you know, damaging them.
Yeah, because that is the issue, and that's when you're going to break the control limit. That's when you're going to exceed. That's when the exposures come about, because again, that's like why the wet removal is in place, because to keep fibre levels as low as possible.
Yeah.
So what issues do we face around it? So if you think about it, when it's been installed, a lot of the time it's installed in situ or drilled in situ. So you might have dust, debris that's formed. It might be debris that's gone into wall voids, in ceiling voids.
Yeah.
If people over the years have put services in and they've not respected the fact that it's asbestos, and we've seen a lot of the times where Sparkies there'll be a fire break in place, and Sparkies will literally get a hammer straight through the board, chuck their new cables through, and then there's dust, debris, just literally sitting there on the surface below.
Yeah, so definitely like where Ian was describing, where the tile has been screwed through, what happens is where that screwing process actually embeds some of the asbestos insulating board to the fixing surface, doesn't it? So
it does.
Where you've got timber joists, the asbestos tile is removed, what it leaves is like residue actually in the screw holes.
Yeah, and it might look minor. You might look at it and go, well, it's only a screw hole with a bit of dust on it. Yeah, well, that can't be a lot.
Yeah.
But that contains millions of asbestos fibres.
Yeah.
That's how minute and how much of an issue it is.
Yeah, and where it's been pressed up onto the surface, sometimes you get a bit of residue on there. And a common one where asbestos insulating board has been sat in a grid and it's been painted, what tends to happen is, as the tiles are removed, the paint sticks to the grid, and then you get a bit of residue that's stuck from the tile on the grid in the paint.
Yeah, so
it's hard to describe, isn't it? So
if you think of a board that's sitting on something that's then been painted, who knows how many times in the last 40 years, there's that layer that builds up and it just gets stuck on there.
Yeah, now you might be able to remove the tile whole and carefully, But what it does, it just breaks off that little bit of residue that's just still stuck on the paint, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you end up with essentially a bit of asbestos insulating board residue stuck on that paint. And that's quite common with, especially if people are keeping existing tracking. They're the sort of things that, as an analyst doing a 4-stage clearance, we'd be looking out for.
And again, that's difficult in itself because sometimes the best will in the world, the client wants to keep the tracking for the new ceiling tiles to go in, but because the removal process, it's demolition of what we're doing. It's controlled demolition, but it is a demolition of sorts.
Yeah.
The tracking will get damaged, broke, stuff like that. So that's kind of a big thing to be aware of, that just because you've asked for the ceiling tracking to be saved doesn't always mean that it can be. It's part of the removal works.
No, definitely not. No. Like you said, all the will in the world, you know, something is going to get damaged and you are going to end up repairing an element, if not all of it.
Yeah. And also, if you've got debris that falls down behind the tracking, stuff like that, well, to hand it back to a safe area for the refit guys to follow in there, then that tracking might need to be removed to actually get to that asbestos, because otherwise it's not going to be safe for the new people to go in and carry on with their work.
It also adds on an additional requirement for the contractor to actually clean all that tracking as well, because sometimes that, you know, if you've got a big area, sometimes you have to weigh up the cost of cleaning that material versus just disposing it.
Yeah, because
if you imagine, like, the, you know, especially, you know, if we're talking like 100 square meters, if you've got a big sales area in a shop or something like that, to individually clean every single bit of that tracking is going to take a lot of man hours versus, you know, whipping up a new ceiling track.
Exactly, and that's a cost analysis to do.
Yeah.
Is it going to cost me more to keep the grid?
Yeah.
Or, yes, there's an expense to remove it and dispose of it, but that versus the cleaning of it to save it versus having a new one put in.
Yes.
A lot of the
versus
time.
The old one, is it going to be 100%
Yeah, exactly.
good anyway?
I think a lot of the time it's better and safer to plan for a new ceiling to go in.
All parties on the removal side would rather that. You know, when it's you know, less to clean, it's a lot easier to take the ceiling down, and it's a lot easier for the analyst to come in and do the visual inspection because it's a lot less to look at.
That firms up what you as a client want at the end of it as well, because you're then guaranteed what you're actually looking for.
Again, if you can remove all elements, so again, going back to the timber joists as well, sometimes you can take the joists out instead of screwing them, you know, and
drilling them all out.
Because you have to drill the holes out to obviously remove all the asbestos fibre that could have penetrated into the timbers. And sometimes doing that alone is time consuming because it has to be shadow vac, and it's a 2-man buddying team doing all that.
If the install team that installed the asbestos insulating board were overzealous with the amount of screws that I've seen, I mean, some panels I've seen loads of screws in, and they all individually need, like you say, shadow vacuuming, and it all just adds on time and time and time.
Yeah, sometimes it is easier just to get rid of those timbers.
We've said it in other podcasts. This goes back to having the good specification and the good forethought and the right team on board to go and do the works that you want. And if you kind of start with the end in mind of what does the finished project look like? Is it a new ceiling? Is it, well, we're just stripping the ceiling out, nothing's going back in? And then you kind of work back to how do you get there, which then does incorporate, well, are we keeping the grid or are we getting rid of it? What issues are we going to have? Do we need to drill everything out, or are we disposing of that? And all of these things down to that detail and that point should be in the spec. Yeah. Because then you shouldn't get any surprises at the end of it.
No. With asbestos removal, sometimes there are surprises unaccounted for, particularly when you're taking down ceilings as well, because with all the will in the world, even if you do a trial area or you inspect, you can see elements of the void above the asbestos insulating board ceiling. There may be areas which, you know, come as a surprise that we can't get into. And we can't clean, for instance.
There's projects that I've been on in the past where you don't know what's happening until you crack on with the job.
Yeah.
So the one I'm thinking of, there was an office in London and it had a ceiling. Now, it looked just like a flat ceiling. And when you looked at it from the underside, you kind of looked at it and thought, well, it goes up to that wall there on the office.
Yes.
However, when we started the asbestos removal work, we actually found out that they'd installed it and the ceiling went over
into next door
as well. Yeah. So then there was that issue to contend with because we're only planning it from Office 1, not from Office 2.
Yeah.
Do we include that? Do we not include that? What are we going to do if we leave it in there?
Yeah.
So all these discussions were had with the client, and we sorted it all out, as we always do. But that is like just a little spanner in the works that can get thrown up.
Yeah.
Asbestos removal, it's not an exact science.
No.
Things happen, as with any trade. There's problems and things that happen on site that you have to overcome.
Yeah, essentially, sometimes you're going into the unknown. You know, when you're taking down ceilings, you don't 100% know what's above there, and you do come across things. And something that we've kind of not mentioned before, but something to consider as well, is when you've got services in the void, and you're taking down ceilings, it's conversations to had about that on the initial specification. Is it a full rip out? So you're removing all the cabling and pipe work and insulation on ducting, pipes. That stuff to be, it's either going to need replacing or covering or cleaning.
When you think about a big spool of electrical cabling with that run on EPOS systems, data cabling, electrics, Cat5 cabling, literally everything, a lot of the time they're all bundled together, and you'll have a big bundle of cables. And all they need done snipping, individually cleaning, and then when the analyst goes in there, they inspect the full length of every single cable to make sure that all dust and debris is gone.
Yeah. So again, that's another thing to take into account. If you're planning to, if you're doing a full refurb and you know that everything's getting replaced, that needs to be incorporated into specification for the removal to say, right, rip it all out. Yeah. Because one, it's going to be ripping out anyway, so you might as well do it, and you're going to save time.
There's no need to save that for the soft strip guys that are doing the soft strip work.
Yeah.
You can bring elements into the asbestos removal that
it's going to save you money.
It will save you money. Yeah, you're right, because it will save you money, because the contractors won't necessarily charge extra for that, because the fact they don't have to clean it means that they can get it done quicker. Yeah. So you're actually saving money.
Yeah.
So it's looking at the whole project and the whole process as an overarching thing from beginning to end, not just each little element of, right, I need to get the asbestos removed, then I've got to get the soft strip boys in, and then I've got to get the first fix guys in, and then the second fit, and all that. It's, right, holistically, what is this project, and what can we tie in and tie together?
Yeah, and factoring in there, when you've got an asbestos enclosure, as Ian said, all dust and debris needs to be removed as far as reasonably practical from within the enclosure, and all elements of the enclosure need to be cleaned. Now, there may be elements that can't be cleaned, such as fibrous materials. So fibrous materials like insulation on pipes, like fiberglass or foam.
Yeah, insulation on ducting, aircon, stuff like that. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to get round that?
Yeah. So if that's all gone, you maybe have to replace it. So that's stuff to bear in mind and factor in for those areas, because sometimes a lot of clients are surprised. It's like they start with an asbestos ceiling, and then when they come back, there's literally nothing there, and like all the pipes are bare. There's no cables, and there's no lights. There's nothing. It's literally, Jesus, what's happened here?
Yeah, exactly.
Literally, you've stripped me back to shell.
Yeah. Again, that's where the spec always comes in. We always hammer it home, but the spec is the king in this. Of what does the end goal look like? How are you going to get there? And what does that look like?
And your asbestos consultant should be, really setting that expectation for you and advising you and giving you, the best practice advice on that.
Yeah. If you're ever in a pickle and you're unsure of what to do or anything, you can contact Neil and I through the Facebook group. All you've got to do is search for Asbestos Knowledge Empire in there. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Remember, asbestos first, not last.